Hi guys, Phil Davis here, CEO at Flyform. I'm joined today by two of my wonderful colleagues. So I've got Steve Williams, who's a senior tech consultant here at Flyform, and Ryan Deuce, who's another one of our tech consultants. So thanks for joining me today, guys. So
pleasure to be here.
Yeah, great to have you. So we're here today to talk about CSDM, the Common Services Data Model. You know, feels very, very new in terms of the lifespan of ServiceNow. So could one of you just give me an overview of what is it? What does it do? What's it used for? Just a really high level kind of, idea of what it's all about.
Yeah. So as we tend to expand our product lines and ServiceNow develops more products, and we want to do more with the platform, we need to make sure that all of the products that we purchase, they all work together seamlessly. And ServiceNow has realized that we need a way to have all the products look at the same data so that we can realize one of our biggest USPs of having everything in ServiceNow, which is a single service data model. So the CSDM formalizes that. It says what data you hold, where it's held, what the relationships are between that data, and applications like service mapping and discovery and customer service management all tie into that same data model, and they know where to look for certain pieces of data, and they know the relationships to other products. And it just means that you can expand your product portfolio much more easily and know that everything works together properly.
Great, that's really helpful. And what kind of challenges will we see in without pre-CSDM? What's a kind of example of a typical challenge someone might see that CSDM is kind of solving for them?
Well, you'd have some customers might create very custom service structures, and you could have a product like service mapping that didn't know where to look for your business services. They wouldn't tie into application portfolio management, which tries to rationalize your application portfolio. You'd build up all of this custom functionality, and then you'd realize it wouldn't work with the next big technology or product initiative that ServiceNow comes along with. So it makes upgrades, and it makes maintenance, and it also makes future-proofing your customizations very hard.
That sounds great. So that sounds like really solving that big challenge then, especially in terms of that long-term kind of scalability, as you mentioned, the upgradability, maintenance, and I guess gives them peace of mind that from a total cost of ownership, they can essentially build once or build that framework once in CSDM and keep layering that into more and more applications as they go. What about you, Steve? Have you seen any other kind of challenges in that area that you'd call out?
Yeah, so I think Ryan's really hit the nail on the head there. It's a great unification of the all the different product lines within the Now platform come together and agreed and defined the terms. So it's removed some of the ambiguity that we've had in the past with business services and application services, technical services. These kind of things were open to interpretation and misinterpretation. And I think with the framework, a lot of effort has been spent to define these things in a way that we have now the conceptual and the physical models. So we have a direct mapping of the terms to the particular tables. We also have the capabilities have been exposed, so things that were previously in kind of walled gardens take technical services in event management, for example, now been brought into some of the core platform functionality. So it's no longer that a customer would need to go and subscribe for event management to be able to make use of the technical services in now dynamic CI groups that are available at the core of the platform. And these kind of things with application portfolio management, the service portfolio management, these kind of capabilities have been introduced as core platform functionality now through the CSDM. And obviously with the definition of terms, it removes that ambiguity and really sets a clear path, a clear direction for organizations to adopt the framework. As Ryan has alluded to, when you do adopt the framework, model your services according to the CSDM, they're immediately compatible with what you have today on the platform and what you might be investing in the future on the platform as well.
That's really, really helpful. Really good for my understanding as well. So what are you guys seeing around, so let's say we take an existing client and they've been on the platform, I don't know, 3-5 years, whatever. So they've got a fairly developed instance pre-CSDM. How do they shift from the old world into the new world? Is that a project in itself to actually go in and redefine and re-implement part of that? Or how does that kind of look and feel for someone that's maybe seeing all this great stuff and thinking, thank God? Because when I'm hearing you talking about business services and ambiguity and interpretation, I'm thinking of all the projects I used to be on, and you spend half of your project arguing about what's a business service and what they are and which ones are technical and so on. So someone's seeing this now and they're thinking, this is what I've been waiting for. How do they get from there to here for an existing client?
Those things are much more clearly defined. You're right. So it kind of is a light bulb moment for many customers, I think, and certainly for me as well. With some areas, especially parts of the platform that I don't necessarily touch too often. I can start to understand how those products will interact with the CSDM and the CMDB as a whole. And for customers that are further along, well established with their ServiceNow instance and their processes and maybe have a few different products enabled in there. I think the process to adopting the CSDM should really be focused on some specific goals that the organization has. So there are two sort of approaches to getting on board with the CSDM framework, and one is the phased approach on sort of maturity model of crawling, walking, running, and flying. And the other then is the phased approach based on those specific outcomes that an organization might have in mind. And it's about how can they implement and which parts of the CSDM can they implement to help them along that journey and realize those goals.
Yeah, that's really useful, and I guess that ties back to one of our best practices of just trying to understand the business objective, the outcome, the business goal. Why are we doing this, and what does good look like at the end of it? And is there anything from a technical perspective that they need to consider or understand, like how they actually shift from one to the other, or is it like a data task essentially, or how does it kind of look technically? Do we know yet?
So there are a few things like conversion to application services. These functionalities have been actually built into the platform. So they're on a business service record, for example, in the platform, there exists an action that you can use to actually convert that to an application service and to bring some of the relationships down and do some of that technical implementation. So it's kind of like a wizard approach to that. Although you need to really think about what that data is and should it become an application service, and also what makes sense to the organization to actually model that out as, so you can have like environment specific application services. You can model them in various different ways. There's still a lot of opportunity to shape things according to what makes sense to a particular business. So it's not a one size fits all, and it's not a dictation of an approach. It's a framework. That's to everyone's benefit as well. It's not that we're being dictated to a particular path. But the capability is there.
Something I think is really useful is that in Paris, the CSDM Foundation dashboard actually gives you some metrics and targets to go to, so you can structure your own get well plan and start to move and migrate your data and relationships to the recommended CSDM approach. And like Stephen says, it's definitely a a framework, but it is kind of taking the path of least resistance. If you can adhere to the CSDM, then it means minimal future customizations to make the most of new ServiceNow products. So those targets and the foundation dashboard you get in Paris are definitely a good way of getting started if it all seems quite overwhelming.
Yeah, that sounds like a really good starting point for people. So pivoting over to new customers, how does this kind of sit for them? Is this a framework we seek to implement on all new implementations now, or is it again like customer size specific? Like, does someone who's got maybe a really small enterprise, small commercial business doing a vanilla ITSM implementation, do they need to go down the CSDM road up front? Is that best practice now? Do we always start to try and set that foundation, or is it more the kind of basic CMDB will function for say the vanilla builds, but then when they start to want to layer in whether that is business services or other parts of the ITOM suite or other parts of the suite, is that when it starts to become a conversation, or is there an approach to that?
I'd say it would always be advisable to tell people about the CSDM right off the bat, because even if they may be a customer that's only implementing ITSM, if they have ServiceNow support or they have partners going in to help them and the data is in the CSDM structure, then that will be familiar to people coming in. Work on the platform will be much more efficient, and it also enables that future scalability. And it also just means that, again, it's taking the kind of path of least resistance, that whatever product you're implementing, having the data in the right place just means that you won't have to change too much out of the box functionality. You won't have to change reference fields or qualifiers or business rules to make the tool work how you want it.
Okay, so say I'm completely new to CSDM. From what we know of it at the moment, does this apply to all? Is this common across the entire suite? So if someone's doing first, say they're a new customer to ServiceNow tomorrow and they're putting ITBM in first, they're doing some PPM stuff or something, is it still that approach for every part of the platform, we think, at the moment, in terms of having that conversation because it's this common model, or is it kind of only aligned to specific suites at the moment, or that kind of stuff?
CSDM 3 that was released in Paris now also includes foundation data, which is applicable across platform. So even something like ITBM, you would still have a dependency on one of the domains of CSDM, and then when you come to potentially expand, then you would tie into that data you're already using for ITBM, and then that feeds into your single source of record. Okay,
interesting. So what are you guys thinking about in terms of the future? So we've talked about the past and the pain points and stuff. We're seeing this new framework coming in now. I assume this framework, is this going to be, do we know if this, like the roadmap for this framework, is it going to be updated in each release or every year, or is it kind of its own kind of version in the wider portfolio? Have we had any insight on that yet from ServiceNow?
Yeah, so I think ServiceNow are moving towards regularly updating the CSDM. I think there are some exciting developments coming down the line with regards to foundation data. So now it's a formal domain within the CSDM. We're going to see more work done around locations and groups. So, for example, in a similar way to how hardware and software data is normalized, I think we're looking towards location normalization as well. I think that's a feature roadmapped for a few releases down the line. So ServiceNow just looking to do as much as possible to really accelerate that early start and get that foundation data in a good formalized structure, rather than leaving customers to work it out on their own and find out that it's not been implemented perhaps to the best and the best integrated to the rest of the platform.
Awesome. What about you, Stephen? You've seen any kind of any wish list for you for the future? Is there anything, I guess, in the framework so far that you think is maybe still missing or needs some more maturity or anything like that? Or, is it such a big leap that we're still kind of in that suck it and see kind of stage?
So I think the adoption to date has been fantastic. The understanding that, you can model your services in such a way that, you'd be immediately compatible with any other product line you choose to adopt in future is a huge leap forward, because it reduces some of that friction to adopting things. It's a unification of, you know, how these different attributes are used across the platform. Everything becomes a lot more sort of understandable and predictable when, you know, you have this definition and this framework that you can refer to, and you know exactly how your ITSM product is going to interact with CMDB for services and how you can benefit from that. And that goes across all the product lines. So you have, you know, your vulnerability management, some of the SecOps suite. You have your NOC analysts benefiting from, you know, business criticality and being able to prioritize their responses to, you know, what's most critical to the business maybe at that time, and adapt from there. So I think there are benefits that span the entire platform, and I think with new introductions, new features being introduced, new product lines, even it's all going to have a basis in the CSDM framework and the CMDB, and that will be at the heart of the platform, and really drive some key processes and opportunities for automation as well.
Awesome. So I guess, guys, we've covered that kind of these old challenges and this journey of you know, multiple pockets of data and walled gardens and things, and this framework obviously coming in is a great remedy for that. And I guess, as we mentioned earlier, you know, clients looking to do this kind of this initial start for them is, firstly, what are the business goals or objectives? You know, what are the objectives of the project? What are they trying to achieve? And second of all, potentially this in Paris, this CSDM, you know, kind of dashboard to look at the kind of health and get a bit of a journey. Are there any other top tips you'd give outside of those two main buckets, really, in terms of the approach for someone who wants to? Is it just, you know, go and do some reading or reach out to us or whatever? What is, you know, are there any other tips you'd give to people getting into that?
So I'd say a good place to start is have a read of the white paper. So there's a CSDM 3 white paper that's been released. It explains all of the terminology that's used in the CSDM. That's one of the big things that leads to data being put into the wrong place, is a misunderstanding of what the terms mean. Maybe they are slightly phrased differently to what you're used to. And quite often that would lead to people loading data into the wrong place and building lots of custom functionality where it shouldn't be. Second of all, I would suggest doing your best to avoid maintaining data in more than one place. So the temptation is to, you know, load your data into one area of the system, build all your custom functionality there, and not utilize the relationships that are available to you. So look at how the items are related to each other, use the CMDB query builder to extract those relationships and put them onto dashboards and build reports that are useful to your stakeholders. And then you don't have to have multiple different silos of information. You can make the most of that single system of record. Awesome.
Anything to add to that, Steve, or does that kind of cover it all?
I'd add that it's key to establish a team who are going to be responsible for the upkeep of that well in advance, and I think that's key to maintaining that integrity, and the governance of that service information is going to be a consistent theme. It's one of these things, you know, that we need to feed and water and keep on top of, in order to really benefit from it.
Yeah, I think just expand on that. You've got that whole concept of those data owners, and then alongside that, for me, where I see a lot of the challenges usually is kind of exec sponsorship or senior management sponsorship. So you need someone, again, senior at the top, stewarding this from a sponsorship level to make sure then that all those data owners understand. You take them on the journey with you. This is why it's important. This is what we're trying to build. This is the pain you don't. And by the way, I'm sponsoring, so please adhere to this, get it done. As we often see that pockets of people may not buy in and want to, play ball as much as others. So Great. Well, guys, it's been really great to speak to you both. Any kind of parting thoughts or comments on CSDM? Wonderful.
White paper.
I read the white paper. Great. Well, thanks, guys. Have a great day, and thanks for coming on today to talk about this with me. And I'll speak to you both again soon.
Speak soon. Thank you.
Yes.